Have you ever found yourself walking into a room, starting a sentence and suddenly forgetting why you're there or what you were about to say? You laugh it off, maybe say something like, "That's what happens when you get old," and move on. But deep down, something stings a little. Not because you forgot, but because you've started to feel like you're becoming a lesser version of who you used to be. Maybe you don't feel quite as sharp as you once did. Maybe people talk over you more than they used to. Maybe you feel invisible in certain situations. It's subtle at first, like a slow erosion. One day you're running your household, planning family events, calling the shots at work or in your community, and the next, it feels like the world is quietly starting to look past you. And here's the truth that no one talks about enough. After 60, confidence can start to slip away, not because you've done something wrong, but because society has trained us to believe that aging somehow means fading. But it doesn't have to. There is nothing weak, boring, or irrelevant about being over 60. In fact, this stage of life can be one of the richest, most fulfilling chapters you'll ever experience, if you know how to reclaim your power. And that starts in the mind. Not with expensive creams or strict diets or pretending to be younger than you are. Confidence doesn't live in your wardrobe or your hair color or how many birthdays you've had. Confidence lives in the way you think about yourself and how you allow those thoughts to shape your life. Today, we're going to gently peel back those limiting beliefs and replace them with 5 simple mindset shifts. These aren't complicated. You won't need to study anything or memorize rules. These shifts are about changing the way you see yourself, so you can finally feel proud, whole, and unshakably confident in the skin you're in. Let's begin where doubt often sneaks in. The quiet belief that your best days are behind you. Maybe you've thought it in passing, "I've already done the important stuff in life," or "I'm just coasting now." It sounds harmless, even humble. But it's one of the most damaging thoughts we can carry. Because when you believe the good stuff is over, you stop reaching for new things. But the truth is, the calendar does not decide the richness of your life, you do. Just because your age says 60, 70, or even 80, doesn't mean the opportunity to grow, connect, or experience joy is gone. It just looks different now. Think of it like this. Your 20s and 30s were about proving things, to yourself, to the world, climbing ladders, raising families, making decisions. But now is the time to live with intention. Now is when you finally have the freedom to explore who you really are, without the pressure to impress, compete, or hurry. There's a quiet kind of power in that. When you let go of the idea that life is winding down and start believing it's unfolding in new ways, your energy changes. You begin to notice the little joys again. That morning cup of tea, a slow walk under the trees, the feeling of stillness in your heart when you realize, this moment is enough. And that brings us to another mindset shift. One that may be even harder to recognize because it's so deeply ingrained. It's the tendency to compare yourself, not just to others, but to your younger self. Maybe you look at old photos and think, "I used to be so much stronger, so much thinner, so much sharper." And maybe you find yourself chasing that old version of you, trying to become her again. But here's something most people never tell you. You're not supposed to be her anymore. You've evolved. The lines on your face, they're not flaws. They're proof that you've laughed, cried, and lived. The softness in your body, that's what it looks like to have carried the weight of a full life. You've raised children, you've lost loved ones, you've worked hard, dreamed big, failed, and tried again. That version of you in the past may have been energetic, but she didn't have the wisdom you have now. She didn't know how strong she could be in the face of grief. She didn't understand how beautiful silence could feel after years of noise. So instead of trying to become your old self, what if you honored the woman you are now, not as a faded version of something better, but as someone who has become? That's not to say you shouldn't care for your body or your appearance. Of course you should, but do it from a place of love, not from shame. Move because you enjoy how it makes you feel. Dress in what makes you feel radiant. Do it because you value yourself, not because you're trying to erase time. Another place where confidence starts to crumble is in your inner voice, the way you talk to yourself when no one's around. You forget something and you say, "I'm so stupid." You struggle with technology and say, "I'm useless at this." Someone offers you help, and you wave them off with, "I'm fine, don't worry about me," even when you do need a hand. It may not seem like a big deal in the moment, but those little comments add up. They chip away at your self-trust. They teach your brain that you're not capable. And here's the shift. Speak to yourself like someone you love. Think about someone you deeply care for, your daughter, your best friend, even your grandchild. If they made a mistake, would you say, "You're useless"? Of course not. You'd say, "It's okay, everyone messes up, you're doing just fine." You deserve that same kindness. Start noticing when that inner critic shows up, and instead of letting it run the show, try this: pause, breathe, and rephrase. "I'm so behind" becomes, "I'm learning something new and that takes time." I look awful becomes, my body has carried me through life. I'm grateful for it. I'm too old for this becomes, I've never tried this before, maybe I'll surprise myself. This simple change, how you talk to yourself, can radically shift the way you feel about your life. You begin to trust yourself again. You feel safer in your own mind. And when you feel safe with yourself, you stop needing the world's approval to feel whole. And isn't that what real confidence is? The quiet knowing that you're okay, just as you are. That you don't have to hustle for worth or apologize for taking up space. I remember a woman I met not long ago, in her late 60s, who had gone through a painful divorce after 35 years of marriage. She said she felt lost, like her identity had disappeared. But slowly she started doing things just for her. Taking long walks, reading poetry, planting flowers. She told me, it was like I met myself again for the first time. And she glowed, not with youth but with something better. Peace. That kind of peace, that gentle but powerful confidence, it doesn't come from fixing anything about yourself. It comes from returning to yourself. And as you start to make these small shifts, releasing the belief that your life is over, letting go of comparisons, speaking kindly to yourself, you'll notice something beautiful. You'll stand a little straighter, breathe a little deeper, maybe even laugh more freely. Because you're not carrying the weight of doubt anymore. You're living from a place of knowing that your life still matters, that you still matter, and that this chapter can be just as meaningful, if not more, than any that came before. So let's keep going, because there are still more truths to uncover, more shifts that can help you feel powerful, present, and fully alive again. Confidence isn't about pretending that everything is perfect. It's about realizing that you're still allowed to grow, to change, and to love who you are, even if life looks different now. And that realization gets deeper when you understand that your worth was never tied to your achievements, your appearance, or the roles you used to play. It's always been within you, quiet, steady, and waiting to be acknowledged. You've spent decades being something to someone, someone's child, someone's spouse, someone's parent, boss, caregiver, or helper. And that's beautiful. But sometimes we give so much to others that we forget how to be something to ourselves. That's where the next mindset shift comes in. Stop living to meet other people's expectations. It's time to return home to your own voice. After 60, a lot of people start to feel like their lives are being dictated by outside forces. Family members might mean well, but their suggestions can start to feel like orders. Doctors tell you what you should and shouldn't do. Society nudges you to act a certain way, as if aging automatically makes you fragile, helpless, or irrelevant. And slowly, if you're not careful, you start shrinking yourself to fit everyone else's narrative. But here's the powerful truth. This is your life. You've earned the right to choose how you live it. You don't have to go to that family gathering if you're tired. You don't have to join the yoga class if you'd rather walk alone in the park. You don't need to explain why you'd prefer quiet mornings or why you're learning to say no more often. You're not here to please anyone. You're here to live honestly. This mindset shift isn't about becoming selfish. It's about becoming authentic. It's about looking inward and asking yourself, what do I want now? What brings me peace, joy, or energy? You've spent enough years adjusting yourself to fit into boxes. This chapter is about breaking free from them. A man once told me that after he turned 65, he stopped saying yes out of guilt. He said, I used to attend every event, help with every project, babysit every grandchild just because I thought I should. But inside, I was exhausted. And honestly, I was starting to feel resentful. One day, he simply decided to start checking in with himself before agreeing to anything. And you know what happened? He felt lighter, more peaceful. His family adjusted, and he finally felt in control again. Not of everything, but of himself. That's what reclaiming confidence looks like. Not being aggressive, not being pushy, just being true to your energy, your boundaries, your time. There's something incredibly powerful about no longer needing others' permission to live your life your way. And once you start doing that, once you give yourself the space to be honest, you might notice something unexpected. Joy starts to creep back in, which leads us into the next mindset shift. Find delight in the present instead of waiting for some big achievement to feel fulfilled. This one may seem simple, but it's deeply transformative. When we were younger, everything was about what came next. Graduate, get a job, start a family, build a home. There was always something on the horizon. But after 60, the rhythm changes. The pace slows, and that can be unsettling at first. If you've always been a doer, you might feel like you've lost your purpose. But here's what most people overlook. Presence is a purpose too. You don't have to achieve something monumental to have a meaningful day. You can find deep satisfaction in ordinary moments, watching birds outside your window, cooking a meal just for you, laughing at a memory that floats into your mind. These aren't distractions. These are your life. There's a woman I know who starts every day by lighting a candle and sitting quietly with her coffee for 10 minutes. No phone, no noise, no agenda. She says it's the most sacred part of her day. It helps her feel grounded. It reminds her that being alive is enough, that she is enough. We're taught to chase big things. But real peace comes from slowing down enough to notice the small things. Think of the confidence that grows from that mindset, from knowing that your value isn't in how busy you are or how many people need you. Your value is in your being. You are allowed to simply exist and still be proud of who you are. And when you practice this presence, when you give yourself permission to stop rushing and just be, you begin to feel more connected to yourself again. You begin to hear your own thoughts, your own dreams, even if they're quieter now. And that brings us to another powerful shift, perhaps one of the most important of all. You must stop believing that aging makes you less relevant. This one is so deeply rooted in our culture that most people don't even realize how much it affects their self-worth. Turn on the TV or scroll through social media and you'll see it. Youth is celebrated while age is ignored. Older voices are dismissed. Experience is undervalued. And the result? You start to question whether what you say or who you are still matters. But let me say this clearly. You are not invisible. You are not irrelevant. You are not too late for anything that matters. Your life experience is unmatched. Your perspective is needed. Your stories are rich with lessons that no book can teach. Your presence can change a room, not because it demands attention, but because it radiates wisdom. If the world doesn't always recognize that, it's their loss, not yours. You don't need external validation to know your worth. You carry it with you in every memory, every scar, every soft moment of grace when you chose kindness over anger. You carry it in the way you comfort others, in the way you've survived hardship, in the way you've kept going even on days you didn't feel strong. That is relevance. That is power. That is something no number can take away from you. When you own that, when you wake up in the morning and say, I am still here, I still matter, I still have something to give, the energy you give off shifts, people feel it. And more importantly, you feel it. Confidence doesn't come from the mirror. It comes from meaning, from knowing you're living in alignment with who you truly are. A man once told me, I'm 73 and I just started writing poetry. I've never shared it with anyone, but it gives me joy. It reminds me that I still have something to say. That's it. That's what this chapter is about. Finding your voice again. Not for approval. Not for attention. Just for the sake of being fully, unapologetically you. The world may try to define you by your age, but only you get to decide how you see yourself. And as you let these new mindsets take root, as you stop comparing, stop apologizing, stop shrinking, you begin to rise, quietly, steadily, powerfully. You begin to show up with more self-trust, more grace, more freedom. Not because life is easy, but because you're no longer hiding from it. You're stepping into it, fully, confidently, as you are. And as you keep walking this path, something beautiful happens. You stop wishing for the past. You stop fearing the future. You start living now. And in that space, you begin to discover a deeper kind of joy. The kind that doesn't depend on anyone else. The kind that belongs fully to you. Let's keep walking together. There's still more to uncover, more to reclaim, more of you to bring into the light. By now, you might be feeling something beginning to shift, not just in your thoughts, but in your heart. Maybe there's a sense of calm, or a whisper of courage you haven't heard in a while. That's the beauty of reclaiming your confidence. It doesn't rush in like a storm. It rises gently, like sunlight, reminding you of your strength without demanding anything from you. You've begun loosening the grip of comparison, of self-doubt, of always living for someone else's expectations. You've started seeing yourself not as someone fading away, but as someone stepping into a new kind of freedom. And now it's time to let go of one more heavy burden, the fear of judgment. After 60, many people quietly start shrinking themselves, not because they want to, but because they're afraid of what others will say or think. Maybe you've felt it, when you wanted to wear something bold but talked yourself out of it. When you wanted to speak up but stayed quiet. When you felt joy about something small but didn't share it because it might seem silly. This fear is subtle, but it's powerful. And the saddest part, it often doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people closest to us, our families, our friends, or even the inner echo of past criticisms we've absorbed over the years. But here's the truth. When you constantly measure your worth against others' opinions, you'll always feel like you're falling short. Confidence can't grow in the shadow of other people's judgments. So here's the final and perhaps most liberating mindset shift. Live like you have nothing to prove. Let that sink in for a moment. You have nothing to prove. Not to your children, not to your siblings, not to your peers, not even to the younger version of yourself. You don't need to justify your choices. You don't need to ask for permission to enjoy your life. You don't need to earn rest or joy or peace. You've already done the hard parts. You've spent decades showing up, sacrificing, pushing through. Now this is your time to simply be, to live honestly, even if others don't fully understand it. There's a woman I once met who started painting at age 68. She hadn't touched a brush in over 40 years. When she told her family she was taking lessons, some of them rolled their eyes. "Why waste money on that?" one relative asked. "You're not going to become a famous artist now." But she went anyway, every week. And one day she said to me, "I don't paint to be great. I paint because it makes me feel alive. That's reason enough. That's the essence of living without needing approval. That's the soul of real confidence. Doing what lights you up, not because it looks impressive, but because it reminds you of who you are." And once you truly embrace this mindset, you begin to notice something magical. The fear that once kept you small begins to fade. You find yourself speaking more openly, smiling more freely, taking more risks, not big, reckless ones, but the kind that make life colorful again. You wear the outfit you love, even if it's a little loud. You take that solo trip you've always dreamed about. You finally say what you've been meaning to say to someone. You begin to show up as yourself, not who you think people want you to be. And when you do that, something incredible happens. The people who truly love you, they see you more clearly than ever. They're drawn to your authenticity. They respect your courage. And the ones who don't, well, they were never really seeing the real you to begin with. You're not responsible for how others react to your truth. You're only responsible for living it. And even on the days when it feels hard, even on the days when your old fears sneak back in, you can return to this place of grounded self-worth, this quiet knowing that you are not too old, too late, or too far gone to be vibrant, joyful, and proud of who you are. Now let's pause and breathe this in together. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to try new things. You are allowed to start over. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to be excited. You are allowed to feel beautiful. You are allowed to take up space. These aren't luxuries. These are your rights. And embracing them is not selfish. It's an act of self-respect. Confidence after 60 doesn't look like pretending to be younger. It looks like accepting who you are without apology. It looks like laughter lines you wear with pride because they came from real joy. It looks like slower mornings where you stretch and listen to your body. It looks like soft clothes, strong boundaries, and the kind of peace that only comes from no longer needing to prove your worth. You may not move as fast, you may not remember every detail, but you carry a kind of brilliance now that no youth can replicate. The brilliance of having lived, loved, lost, and still being here, still choosing to open your heart. And yes, there will be moments of doubt. That's human. But every time you choose to return to these mindset shifts, you strengthen your foundation. You remind yourself, I'm still growing, I still matter, I still have something to offer, I'm allowed to feel good about myself. And that confidence, it begins to radiate. People notice, not because you're louder, but because you're rooted. Because you walk into a room and don't need to be anyone but yourself. That kind of presence is unforgettable. So if you've been waiting for someone to give you permission to feel powerful again, consider this your sign. You don't need fixing, you don't need approval. You just need you, the real you, the one that maybe got buried under years of responsibilities, expectations, and silence. She's still there, and she's ready to step forward again. Start small. Start with one gentle change, a kinder word to yourself, a braver yes, a firmer no. You don't have to overhaul everything. Just keep showing up, keep choosing yourself, keep living like you believe you belong because you do. And if you ever feel alone on this journey, remember this. There are millions of people just like you, rediscovering themselves, reclaiming their power, and finally realizing that life doesn't end after 60. In many ways, it begins again. So here's to you, to the lines on your face and the strength in your soul, to the mornings you rise even when your body aches, to the dreams that still flicker, the laughter that still bursts out, the love you still have to give. Here's to walking into the rest of your life with your head held high, not because everything's perfect, but because you finally see the beauty in being perfectly, powerfully you. Thank you for being here. If this message resonated with you, I hope you'll share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your voice. And if you want more uplifting and practical content like this, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. We're building something special here, a space where age isn't a barrier but a badge of honor. You are worthy, you are whole, and you are deeply, unapologetically enough. Here's to living your best life at any age.